My sister has spent the last 8 years hijacking every major milestone in my life, but what she pulled at my wedding ended up blowing up her own marriage in less than a day. Hey there. I'm 28 now, and I'm getting married in about a year. I sent the invites out just last week, and ever since then, my sister and parents have been giving me a hard time about it. But before I get into the real issue, there's some backstory I need to share that'll help make sense of everything that's happening now. My sister Liza is 33, and let's just say, our relationship has always been a bit of a mess. She can be downright mean and patronizing, a toxic mix I've had to deal with for way too long. Growing up, I always hoped we'd be close, but she never really felt the same way. Most of the time, she acted like I was some annoying burden she wanted nothing to do with. Back then, I was pretty naive. I genuinely believed that if I just tried hard enough, she'd come around and maybe even like me. To me, she was kind of this idol. I looked up to her and really wanted to build that sisterly bond as we got older. Liza's always had a flair for the dramatic and seemed to thrive on attention. That was just who she was, and I accepted it without too much thought. Looking back now, maybe I was fooling myself, hoping we could ever be genuinely close. I think reality finally hit me when she told me I wasn't invited to her wedding. She told me straight up it was going to be an adults-only affair, so I wasn't welcome. The wild part? Her wedding was just 7 days before my 18th birthday. I remember laughing at how ridiculous that was and even begged her to make an exception, but she wouldn't budge. In her eyes, I was still a kid. There were no age rules at the venue, and they weren't even serving alcohol, so there really wasn't a solid reason for her to leave me out. It felt personal, like she just didn't want me there. No matter how much I pleaded, she stood firm and kept me off the guest list. And my parents? They didn't step in to say a word or try to help smooth things over. That moment was kind of a turning point for me, and I started pulling away from Liza after that. Either she didn't notice I was keeping my distance, or she just didn't care. I'm guessing it was the second one. Our relationship stayed weird after that, and to be honest, I barely know her husband at all. We only cross paths at family events, and we don't talk outside of those gatherings. She's got 2 kids I care about, but I wouldn't say I'm close to them either. Liza's never made any effort to hang out with me or invite me over. The last time I really tried to reconnect was when her kids were born, but she brushed me off like always. Eventually, I just gave up and chose to invest my energy in family members who actually seemed to give a damn. And all of that brings us to now. So I got engaged, and my fiancé and I picked a date for the big day. Right from the start, we were both on the same page. We wanted a child-free wedding. We got the invitations ready early and made it crystal clear that the event would be adults only. Liza got hers just like everyone else. I was feeling good about everything and full speed ahead with planning until something happened that made me sit down and write all this out. A few days ago, my sister called me out of the blue, totally furious, and started yelling like I'd done something insane. At first, I had no clue what she was even talking about, so I asked her to slow down and explain. In between her yelling, I figured out she was mad because we weren't allowing kids at our wedding. Yep, she was genuinely outraged that we weren't inviting children. The same woman who planned a wedding that excluded everyone under 18 was now angry that I was doing the exact same thing. I kept asking if she was being serious or if I was missing something, but nope. She was dead serious. She made it very clear she was upset that her kids weren't welcome. I calmly reminded her that it's my wedding and that my fiancé and I get to decide how it's set up. I told her flat out that we chose not to have kids at the ceremony or the reception. And that's when she really lost it. She called me selfish and childish for not including her precious boys in the celebration. I tried to reason with her and pointed out that most of the kids in our family are under 5. They wouldn't even know what they were missing. Plus, we didn't want little ones running around, getting into stuff, especially with all the alcohol we're planning to serve. Most of the folks with kids have babies or toddlers, and let's be real, it's hard to keep an eye on them nonstop to make sure they're behaving. Kids are unpredictable, and instead of dealing with chaos, We figured it was easier to avoid the drama altogether. Apparently, that was the absolute worst thing I could have said, because Liza jumped down my throat and accused me of calling her kids wild and out of control. I told her that wasn't what I meant at all. But then she hit me with this: if her kids weren't like the others, then they should be allowed to come. I explained to her that I couldn't make an exception just for her, because then everyone else would expect the same and it'd turn into a whole mess. Honestly, I've got some close cousins and friends who'd be pretty hurt if I let Liza bring her kids, but told them no. I laid all that out for her, hoping she'd get it, but she just refused to listen. Eventually, I hit my breaking point and told her flat out that she had no right to be mad at me when she'd pulled the same thing years ago. I reminded her how she left me out of her wedding, even though I was just a week away from turning 18. She excluded her own sister, and here I was just asking that young kids not come to the party. My sister didn't take that last comment well. She completely blew up on me again, shouting that now she really understood why I didn't want kids at the wedding. According to her, I was being petty, vindictive, and childish, just holding onto some old grudge from the past. She even called me unhinged and said she couldn't believe I was doing all of this on purpose just to get back at her. I was about to tell her that this had nothing to do with her, but she hung up before I could even get a word in. After that, I didn't bother reaching out again. I figured if she needed space, she could take it. But instead of letting it go, she started flooding my phone with all kinds of nasty, over-the-top messages. And of course, she dragged my parents into it too. They've both been calling me, telling me that maybe an adults-only wedding isn't the best idea. They said I was being cold-hearted by refusing to include my own nephews. Yep, the same parents who had no issue whatsoever when I was left out of her wedding. Now they're trying to guilt me into giving in, saying I shouldn't let this ruin my relationship with my sister over something they see as a small request. But I'm sitting here wondering, how is this even a request, let alone a small one? So yeah, I'm not just frustrated with Liza anymore. Now I'm pissed at my parents too. I talked it through with my fiancé, and thank God he's on the same page. He doesn't want to make exceptions either, especially since it could stir up drama with folks on his side of the guest list. In fact, he's beyond annoyed with my sister and my parents for trying to back me into a corner. He knows exactly what Liza pulled at her own wedding, and the fact that they're siding with her now drives him nuts. He's made it very clear he doesn't want any kids at the wedding, and, thankfully, his whole family agrees with that decision. He's 100% behind me, and honestly, he said he'd be happier if my sister didn't show up at all. It's also becoming really obvious that they're trying to manipulate me emotionally, which is crossing a serious line. And look, I love my nephews. I really do. I might not be super close with them, but I care about them. That said, our wedding rules apply to everyone, no exceptions. At this point, I've seriously thought about eloping. If it weren't for my fiancé's family, I probably already would have. They haven't caused any trouble, and I'd feel terrible taking away their chance to celebrate their son's big day. But the drama from my side of the family is making me second-guess even inviting them. Let me start with the obvious. Yes, I knew some people were going to judge me for choosing to have a child-free wedding. But honestly, I don't think I'm asking for anything outrageous. If I had teenage cousins or older kids in the family, I'd totally invite them. But all of the minors in our family are under the age of 5. And let's be real, young kids can complicate events like this. Weddings are long, slow, and, if we're being honest, pretty boring for little ones. None of them would actually enjoy sitting through it. And no, I don't think it's any kinder to let them come to just the ceremony and then send them home. That would probably make them feel worse. So we decided early on that it's best not to involve them in any part of the celebration. As for my sister's reaction when I called her out on her double standards, yeah, her logic was something else. She told me that back when she got married, nobody had kids yet. So, according to her, it made sense to have an adults-only wedding at the time. But now that a bunch of our cousins have children, I should include them. Here's the thing, I've realized I probably would have been the only underage guest at her wedding. None of her friends were young, and no one in the family had kids yet. I was the youngest one in the group. And even then, she didn't think it was worth making an exception for her own sister. So now I'm wondering, why were my parents totally fine with that decision back then, but suddenly they have a problem with mine? I begged them back then to talk to Liza about letting me come, and they just shrugged and said it was her day, so they couldn't interfere. That's sounding pretty ironic now, isn't it? Nobody's complained. In fact, they've been really supportive. They all live fairly close by and are already lining up childcare for the day. We're giving them a whole year's notice, so there's plenty of time to get everything sorted. Honestly, I think a few of them are kind of excited to have a guilt-free break and enjoy themselves without having to worry about their kids. It's a chance for them to just relax and have a good time, something I know a lot of parents could use. Even though there's been a bit of backlash, most of the criticism I've seen is from people who just flat out hate the idea of adults-only weddings. I seriously don't understand why some folks think their kids need to be included in every single life event. Like, would you take your toddler to a bar or a fancy dinner party and then get mad when they're not allowed in? It makes zero sense. It's that kind of thinking that pushes couples to go child-free in the first place. Kids do cause disruptions, it's just how it is. And I'm not blaming the kids for that. They're just being kids. But instead of scolding them or making them uncomfortable, why not just remove the situation entirely? It's not like I hate kids or don't want them around ever. That's not it at all. I've explained my reasons and I think they're reasonable. Plus, let's be honest, these kids won't even remember the wedding. Most of them won't even understand what's going on. And bored kids at weddings? They don't sit quietly, I'll tell you that much. So can we please stop acting like kids need to be part of every single event? That kind of thinking isn't any better than the attitude my sister has. Oh, and for those who tried to flip the script and say I can't complain about being excluded from Liza's wedding if I'm doing the same thing now, that's just silly. This isn't about revenge. It's about consistency and respecting the kind of wedding we want to have. I was just about to turn 18 back then, and believe me, I knew how weddings worked. I'd been going to events like that since I was 14. I always behaved, never caused a scene, and understood how to act because I was old enough to handle myself. If there were teenagers in the family now, I'd have absolutely included them. But like I've said before, every child being excluded from our wedding is under 5 years old. I just wanted to make that clear and share where I'm coming from. After this, I'm done addressing comments about it. Honestly, that might not be far off. My sister has never liked being a sister. She made it pretty obvious early on that she didn't want to share attention with anyone. I think my parents picked up on that and felt guilty for having a second daughter when Liza clearly wasn't thrilled about it. Maybe that's why they always seemed to take her side or pressured me to back down, at least, that's my theory. Looking back, she's caused scenes during just about every big moment in my life. And now that I think about it, the date she picked for her wedding right before my 18th birthday might not have been an accident. In our family, turning 18 is a big deal. We usually throw a big celebration for it. But thanks to her wedding, everyone was too worn out to do anything special, and our parents didn't have the money left over for a party. She took over all the attention that weekend. And then on my 21st birthday, she announced she was pregnant with her first kid. When I landed my first full-time job, she followed that up with her second pregnancy announcement. I'm just now seeing the pattern here. She has a knack for hijacking my milestones. Maybe she is creating drama on purpose just so the attention swings back to her. And honestly, I'm worn out. I'm so over this behavior. The only thing stopping us is the reaction we know we'll get from my parents. They'd probably be heartbroken if their golden child didn't get an invite. Plus, there's the risk of it setting off a whole chain reaction with other family members taking sides. Still, we haven't rolled it out. Now, my parents are pushing for a full-on family sit-down to try and settle things. They want me and Liza to come over so we can talk everything out under one roof and supposedly move forward. They seem convinced that if we all just talk face to face, we'll magically come to some great compromise. I hate to burst their bubble, but I'm not budging. This is my wedding, and if they push me too hard during that meeting, I might just take that moment to pull their invites too. Just got back from that family meeting. My parents were so sure we'd all walk away happy and on the same page. Let's just say, things didn't go quite how they expected. Liza came in already fired up, refusing to compromise on anything. And me? I stayed firm too. She went off, yelling at me again for not allowing her precious children at the wedding. What's wild is, I don't even think it's about the kids. She acts like she cares so deeply about them, but the truth is, she uses them as props to center herself in every situation. She's the only one in the family with kids, and I honestly believe she sees this as her chance to steal some of the spotlight. I mean, if she brought them to the wedding, she probably wouldn't even keep an eye on them. She'd let them run wild while she basked in the attention. I tried, again, to explain our reasons for having an adults-only celebration. But she didn't want to hear a word of it. At least my parents looked a little uncomfortable. I was calm, respectful, and tried to keep the peace while Liza was full-on screaming. Not that she listened to them either. I looked her in the eye and told her yelling and trying to guilt-trip me wasn't going to work. My decision was final. That's when she snapped and said if it was my whim to keep kids out, then I should be the one paying for a babysitter. I told her flat out, that's not happening. First of all, it's not my job to cover that cost. Second, she has the money. I know she hires sitters for her date nights, so it's not like it's out of her budget. She just doesn't want to pay this time because she didn't choose the arrangement. I told her we're already working with a tight wedding budget, and my fiancé would never agree to paying for something like that. Then she switched gears, whining about how finding a sitter on such short notice was impossible. I couldn't help but laugh. I reminded her we gave everyone a full year's notice. If she hadn't made any arrangements by now, that was on her, not me. My parents even offered to cover the babysitter, which I thought was generous. But of course, Liza turned that down too. She didn't want their money, she wanted me to pay, because I hadn't considered her feelings. Then my parents came up with another idea. Why not let Liza's husband stay home with the kids so she could attend solo? She hated that suggestion too. After what felt like hours of going in circles, I was completely drained. I couldn't take another second of her tantrums. So I told her point blank, I'm not changing anything about the wedding. And if she's that upset, she doesn't have to come. She lost it again, shouting at me, and of course, my parents backed her up. They said I should want my sister at my wedding. But here's the thing, I wanted a peaceful, happy day surrounded by people who love and support us. And right now, that just doesn't include Liza. I let out a light laugh and said what I'd been holding back for way too long. If anyone had a problem with my wedding, with the way we wanted to celebrate our day, then they were more than welcome not to come at all. When I got home, I immediately filled my fiancé in on how the meeting went down. He was even more furious than before. He can't stand how entitled my parents are acting. Since then, my sister and parents have been blowing up my phone nonstop, calls, texts, you name it. I haven't even bothered to look at the messages yet. I'd hit a breaking point where I genuinely felt like my wedding was already ruined, and I hadn't even gotten to the actual planning stage yet. All the drama had completely drained me. I wasn't excited anymore, I wasn't motivated, and honestly, I just wanted to be done with it all. My sister's nonsense had taken over what was supposed to be one of the happiest times of my life. I was right on the edge of turning to my fiancé and asking if we could just elope and to start telling his family. My friends, extended family, and my fiancé's side, they didn't do anything wrong. That hit hard. It was like a switch flipped in my head. She was already taking the spotlight, and I hadn't even walked down the aisle yet. So I took a step back, thought about everything, and decided it was time for a proper talk with my parents. My fiancé came with me, partly for support and partly because he had a few things to say himself. We didn't invite Liza. This wasn't a group therapy session. This was a private conversation that needed to happen. I was angry at them, but I figured maybe, just maybe, without Liza in the room yelling, we could actually get somewhere. And wow, it was emotional. There were tears. I cried. My parents cried. It wasn't pretty, but it was real. For the first time, I didn't hold anything back. I laid it all out. Every moment Liza had stolen from me, every time they ignored it or excused it, every time they chose her comfort over my feelings. I reminded them how they refused to ask Liza to include me in her wedding, and now they expected me to bend over backwards for her kids. I told them exactly how close I was to calling off the whole thing and eloping just to avoid this mess. That part hit them hard. You could see it sink in. The realization that I'd gotten to a point where I didn't even want to plan my own wedding anymore. My fiancé spoke up too. He made it clear he supported me, even if that meant ditching the big celebration entirely. He said watching me suffer through all this drama made it impossible to enjoy the process, and that none of it was fair to me. My mom cried even harder after that, and my dad, who usually stays calm, started pleading with me not to go through with eloping. They finally saw it. They finally understood how much this had affected me and how they'd played a role in enabling Liza's behavior all these years. I had a gut feeling that part of the reason they always took Liza's side was because she'd resented them ever since I came along. She never wanted a sibling, especially one she had to share attention with. And my parents, feeling guilty, always tried to smooth things over by giving her what she wanted. But that only made her worse. Her jealousy and selfishness are honestly beyond anything I can understand at this point. I'm completely done with her. That long, overdue conversation with my parents made a difference, though. My fiancé gave them an outside perspective they hadn't heard before, and I think that helped them realize just how unfair they'd been. They begged us not to run off and elope. They said they wanted to be there for my big day for me. And, maybe for the first time, they admitted that most of my accomplishments over the years had been overshadowed by Liza's life events. They were tired of it too. They finally got it. And they promised things would be different moving forward. As for Liza, I'm done caring about what she thinks. I've already started drafting a letter officially cutting contact. And yes, we're revoking her invitation to the wedding. My fiancé and I have made our decision, and we're standing by it. Even my parents are on board now. She might be my sister by blood, but that doesn't give her the right to hijack my wedding or any other moment of my life. This isn't about excluding royalty. It's about setting boundaries with a spoiled adult who pushed too far for the last time. Well, yeah, there's definitely been some fallout. But here's the thing, it's been surprisingly quiet on my end. I was ready for her to stir up all kinds of trouble, but this time around, I came out of it calmer than I expected. You might be wondering why that is. So, let me fill you in. Spoiler alert, Liza is now dealing with problems in her own marriage. After I sent her the message, one by text and another by email, clearly stating that she was no longer welcome at the wedding and that I was cutting contact indefinitely, she predictably exploded. I told her I was done with the tantrums and the emotional blackmail, and I wouldn't tolerate it anymore. I'd had enough. Now, I expected her to be mad, but the level of offense she took actually caught me off guard. She was furious. And honestly, that surprised me. She spent most of her life making it clear she didn't want me around, so I figured being uninvited would be a relief for her. But nope. She acted like I'd just committed some unforgivable sin. She was outraged, offended, and indignant. And now? Well, her husband's had enough of the drama too. From what I've heard through the family grapevine, their relationship is on rocky ground, and this whole wedding debacle might have been the final straw. I'm not trying to gloat. I'm not happy about someone else's marriage being in trouble. But it is pretty ironic that the same woman who tried so hard to ruin my celebration is now facing the consequences of her own behavior. And for once, I'm not the one suffering for it. After I stopped replying to my sister's messages, she ran straight to my parents to complain about how I was ignoring her. But this time, She didn't get the reaction she expected. My parents actually backed me up. That must have thrown her off, because next thing I know, she's telling the rest of the family that I cut her off for no reason, painting me as some selfish, jealous, heartless villain. At first, a few relatives started reaching out, asking me to be more understanding or just patch things up with her. But then everything flipped. One of my cousins dropped a bombshell in the family group chat that changed everything. According to my cousin, Liza wasn't mad about being uninvited just because of the kids. She was furious because it ruined her plan to steal my spotlight at the wedding. Yeah, she had apparently been trying to convince her husband to have a third baby just so she could either show up pregnant or announce a pregnancy during my wedding. Let that sink in. My cousin said Liza actually told her all of this not long after I got engaged. She bragged that she was going to humiliate me at my own wedding and take all the attention for herself like she always did. I'm not going to repeat the full details of what she said, but let's just say it was way more disturbing than I imagined. It's clear now my sister sees me as some kind of rival. I've never looked at her that way, but she's always been locked in this weird, one-sided competition. So when she realized I'd gone full no contact and took her out of the wedding plans entirely, she lost it. Things blew up fast after my cousin exposed her. Suddenly, the rest of the family saw her for who she really was. People were stunned. Even my parents were outraged. And here's the wild part, Liza didn't even deny it. She tried to justify it, claimed she had her reasons, and tried to play it off like no big deal. But that just made it worse. Her husband wasn't having any of it. From what my parents told me, he was absolutely disgusted that she would use something like pregnancy as a weapon to sabotage her own sister's wedding. And apparently, this wasn't the first time she'd pulled stuff like this. Turns out, Liza had also been causing tension with his family, trying to compete with his sister and cousins too. This whole wedding stunt? It was the final straw. He told her flat out, "Get therapy, or we're done." She broke down, went crying back to our parents, and, of course, blamed me for ruining her marriage. Yep. Now it was my fault her relationship fell apart. Makes perfect sense, right? She even tried calling me from a different number to scream at me, but the moment I heard her voice, I hung up. Thankfully, she stopped after a few days, mostly because her husband, well, ex-husband now, started putting his foot down. They're doing couples therapy, but he's sleeping in a separate room. Honestly, I think he's only sticking around for the kids at this point. He'd already been fed up for a while. Her behavior was pushing his own family away, and this whole wedding sabotage plan, that sealed the deal. I honestly hope she takes the therapy seriously and starts working on herself. As for me, looks like I might actually get to have a peaceful, drama-free wedding after all. So, it happened. I'm married. I can't believe it's been a whole year since I started posting all this. Time really does fly, especially when you're planning a wedding and juggling everything else life throws at you. But yep, we did it. We're officially hitched. And before I close the book on this whole saga, let me fill you in on what ended up happening with my sister and what she tried to pull on the big day. First off, she's officially divorced now. Even though she and her husband tried to make it work, he eventually spoke to my parents after everything was finalized and told them his side of the story. He said he honestly gave it his best shot, but Liza was just too much to deal with. Not only did she not take therapy seriously, she actually made things worse. At one point, she even threatened him, said if he left her, she'd try to sleep with his friends out of revenge. That was it for him. He filed for divorce after that. But wait, it gets crazier. On the morning of my wedding, my parents couldn't get to the venue because someone had slashed their car tires. They ended up getting a ride with another relative. Thank God, but yeah, turns out it was Liza who did it. The neighbors had camera footage showing her sneaking around the car. At first, we weren't totally sure, but then they confirmed it was her. And just when we thought that was the worst of it, someone called in a bomb threat during our ceremony. We had to evacuate the venue and wait outside for nearly 2 hours. Luckily, nothing was found, and we got to continue the celebration after all that chaos. It was stressful, yeah, but the important part is, the wedding went on. We got married, and our guests still had an amazing time. Here's the kicker. We invited Liza's ex-husband to the wedding. My parents asked us to include him. They wanted to stay on good terms with him for the sake of their grandkids. And since it was Liza's day to have the kids, he didn't even need a sitter. There's a good chance Liza was behind the sabotage attempts because she found out we invited him, but apparently, he didn't tell her anything. He didn't see the point in updating her on his life after the divorce. And guess what? At the reception, I saw him having a lively conversation with one of my friends. Later, I asked her about it, and she said, "Oh, we were just talking." Sure. I've seen Just Talking. That wasn't it. Turns out I was right. She finally confessed that he asked her out on a date. And honestly, I'd lose it laughing if I end up going to their wedding someday. Especially considering I didn't even get to attend his wedding to my sister.